Good morning, America. How are ya? Monday morning rail. We'll be 500 miles before the day is done. They call me the city of New Orleans. Hi, I'm Denny Jelsma, and I'm at the world famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum. Today is Monday, and you know what we do on Monday? You guessed it, we always do show and tell. But before show and tell starts, Show and Tell is brought to you every week by Jelsma Graphics, the people that make all the embroidered railroad clothing. So if you need hats, shirts, whatever your favorite railroad, Jelsma has over 1,500 logos. So go to jelsma.com. And with that being said, Show and Tell starts right now.
Hi, I'm Greg Turn, and today we're going to talk about the second video on the freight operation that Jacksonville Terminal had. We're going to concentrate on A&P today, but first I'm going to give you a couple of little tidbits, okay? For example, on, April 12th, 1962, okay, Clark Fruit Company were complaining that 3 reefers that had been initially iced had been received by Jacksonville Terminal at 10:35 p.m. on the 12th of April, 1962, but they were not placed until 9:30 a.m. on the 13th. Now Clark was very upset about this because they start work at 6 a.m. and normally their cars would have been placed by 6 a.m. and so the terminal company were going to have a discussion with the third shift crew to find out why they weren't placed properly at a proper time. And another error. October 30th, 1958, Southern Railway wrote concerning cars CNW 76946 loaded with scrap paper, shipped by I.V. Steupen Company to the Tennessee paper mills in North Chattanooga, Tennessee, that Southern said was supposed to go to them, but Jacksonville Terminal delivered it to ACL, and Southern kind of wanted to know why. On November 18th, the terminal responded that they had determined that the error was actually by the shipper. They had filled out the top of form OC1 indicating it should have been delivered to the coastline, whereas in the middle they showed that it was Southern routing. So they ended up changing all the paperwork, and ACL actually finally got the money for that particular move. Having been said that, we're now going to look at A&P. And we have a model of A&P. We've got 2 buildings and several places to switch, as you can see. A&P was the largest industry switched by the terminal company. They had 3 long tracks, as you can see. This is at least halfway close to what they actually had. We have 3 tracks, okay? But because of the length of the tracks and the distance, when the terminal company was switching A&P, they left the switch, which is this switch on the main line, they would have left it open for them, obviously blocking then the main from anyone else using it. Southern Railway would have a switch engine coming down from Simpson Yard and heading this way, and they started complaining about that delay, and they wanted the terminal company to close that switch except all the time, or to have a crew member standing by at the switch to close it when they came through. Now, Seaboard, or the terminal company, replied and said, well, that's not really possible, okay? Because of the layout of the track, we need the entire crew to do the switching. They have, as you can see here, there were road crossings over the switching tracks that had to be flagged because the sidings were quite long. There were multiple spotting points for different cars that had to be coordinated with the warehouse manager so that everything was put in the right position, and they just couldn't do that. So the solution they came up with was that before Southern came down, they would call Beaver Street Tower. So, and we'll go around and we'll look a little bit at our model of Beaver Street Tower. And you can see Beaver Street Tower, even in our simplified version, it's a fairly complex interlocking. And this tower, the towerman here, Southern would call the towerman. The towerman would get a hold of the train crew on the radio, and then the train crew who was switching A and P would come down, close the switch, let the Southern come through. Now, if Southern didn't call the tower, they would simply come up to a red signal and couldn't proceed. The tower would not get notification that they were coming because they would not show up on their board. The other option Southern theoretically do is they could have their crewmen walk down, close the switch, and then they could come through, but they complained that that was too far to walk. So that was the solution they came up with. Now, just some things, different things that happened with A and P. Now, I originally thought that this A and P only had inbound cars and that they would be distributing to the stores in the greater Jacksonville area. Turns out they also had some outbound shipments. On June 6th of 1957, there was a letter that came out that said, on each Tuesday, A&P is going to load 2 cars of perishables for West Palm Beach, and gave them a very tight window to get these cars moving. They were going to be ready by noon, 12 noon. They must be spotted at the ice house by 1 p.m. And that would have been the Atlantic Cold Storage ice house, the one we talked about last week. So they had an hour to pull the car and get it over there. Then another hour to get it iced and set for the FEC to pick up not later than 2 p.m. So notice we had a very short window to get that done. And notice that in order to do that, we had to cross through the BS interlocking that we showed before. And that was a very busy interlocking with a lot of passengers and a passenger and freight train moving over it. So sometimes it took quite a while to get through that. But this was an expedited shipment that had to be done. Sometimes we got some errors. Okay, on August 30th of 1950, there was a Southern Pacific car, 14 8874 that was supposed to go to Chitty, which was another grocery distributor on the FEC, and we'll see that in a later video, okay? But it went to the AP in error. Came from the ACL, but the ACL had billed it to A&P instead of to Chitty. At one time, let's see, according to this bulletin T118, the grocery sidetrack number 2 was shortened by 123 feet because they were going to possibly expand a building onto that. Oh, let's see. Oh, this is kind of an important one, okay? A letter from the Seaboard. Oh, there's a letter and a whole packet of material about a car that generated a major damage claim, okay? This car was received from the Seaboard in October 1959, and the terminal company was not getting proper lists, bills, or especially in this case, information on perishables so that they could be handled properly. At that time, car TRAX 12525 loaded with meat for A&P, and notice it only said meat. Didn't say anything about being refrigerated or needing ice, according to this. Okay. Supposedly, the Seaboard switched list shows that it was delivered to the terminal company on October 8, 1959 at 2:20 p.m. But the delivery sheet that the terminal company got has no time listed, and when they checked their yard at both 1 p.m. and 8 p.m., that car was not in the yard. The terminal company felt that the car was mishandled at West Jacks, and it was not delivered until sometime during the night because it did show up on their 8 o'clock in the morning check of the yard. They placed this car at A&P at 2:05 on October the 9th. As I said, they were given no information. Oh, and this was also a stopover car. And that meant that the car was brought into A&P. It would be partially unloaded, and then, in this case, it would be forwarded to Miami. Now, it was, again, they said no information was given that it was a stopover car. No information was given that it was under refrigeration. And the terminal company didn't think much about that because they got a lot of canned meat cars for A&P that did not require refrigeration. It was pulled on October the 12th, delivered to FCC for forwarding to Miami. And here's something interesting too. Normally, A&P wanted to be shifted between 11 and 1 during the day when they were on lunch break, so that they wouldn't break up their day. However, carloads of perishables were normally spotted first thing in the morning. Again, that didn't happen with this car because they didn't know about it. We're getting a little long in the tooth. Okay. Well, I can stop now. There's some more we'll talk about a little bit more about A&P on the next show, but I just want to leave you with one other thing, which is this. Says Phoebe Snow, about to go upon a trip to Buffalo. My gown stays white from morn till night upon the road of anthracite. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg. That was very interesting, and small little details about A&P is really, really interesting. And I know the viewers have made quite a few comments on the first show last week. Now, I want you to remember, Greg signs autographs at 8 o'clock on Friday mornings. 8 o'clock, he'll sign autographs, and you could have his 8x10 glossies. And then when Richard New, he's on a lot of our videos, make sure that you get a glossy photo signed by him. He signs on Mondays from 7 a.m. to 7:30. So, with all that being said, that's show and tell, and that's the way it is at the world famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is an absolute pleasure.